Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we have a recent reads wrap-up and upcoming TBR. So as always, I think you all know the drill now. Every 5 to 6 books I finish up, I will get on here, talk about them in some detail, give you my star rating, and at the end of this video, I will feature the next several books I plan on picking up. Before we get into the recent reads wrap-up, I want to quickly thank this video's sponsor, Book of the Month, who I'm so happy to be working with again. I love Book of the Month so much. Several of the books I'm featuring in this video actually came from Book of the Month, so I'm definitely happy to be partnering with them again. If you didn't already know, Book of the Month is a monthly book subscription service where every month the Book of the Month team curates 5 to 7 new release picks for you to choose from, and you get to select whichever one you'd like. They're always new release hardcover editions that you get to select from, and if you don't like any of the books that they've chosen for that month, it is completely risk-free because you can just skip that month for no additional cost and wait until next month. The other alternative is if you don't like any of the picks of that month, you can always look at the backlist of books that Book of the Month has selected in the past and add on any of those as your pick of the month. And it's only $9.99 for your first book with the code that I will link down below. The other really cool thing that Book of the Month is now doing is they're now hosting a podcast called the Virtual Book Tour that is available to subscribe to on Apple or Spotify. So the goal of the podcast is to have the Book of the Month editorial team interview authors in front of a live studio audience at their headquarters in New York. And so far they've gotten to interview 6 authors. I am so excited to listen to the episode where they interview Chelsea Abdullah, who is the author of The Stardust Thief, which is an epic high fantasy book that I have been really wanting to check out soon. I will link all the information down below if you're interested in checking out their podcast. Again, it's available on Apple and Spotify. The books I selected for this month are actually 2. So I selected Upgrade by Blake Crouch, which is one of my most anticipated releases of the whole year. I love Blake Crouch. I know that there are mixed feelings on Blake Crouch. I personally fall in the love it camp. I loved Dark Matter so much. That is one of my favorite sci-fi thriller novels of all time. And then Recursion I also really enjoyed. I just love his style of sci-fi thrillers, and Upgrade I'm sure is going to be another one that I just fall in love with. So super excited that this was available as one of their selections, as well as Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. So this is one that I've been hearing a ton of buzz for, and it's actually really exciting because originally the cover is what immediately drew me in. I think that this cover is so fantastic, might be one of my favorite covers, especially the fact that it's featuring that really famous Japanese painting of the wave. I love that. The synopsis of this one also grabbed my attention immediately. It says that this is about 2 friends, often in love but never lovers, come together as creative partners in the world of video game design, where success brings them fame, joy, tragedy, duplicity, and ultimately a kind of immortality. So I think you're following these video game designers, and it just sounds like such a fun ride. I'm really excited that I ended up selecting this one, especially given how much buzz I've been hearing about it since I selected it. And thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video. All right, so let's get into the books that I read recently that I would like to share with you. So I'm gonna go, as always, in the order of my least favorite to my favorite. We do have 2 DNFs to get out of the way, so I'll start with those, and then we'll talk about the books I actually finished. The first DNF is quite a big disappointment. It's What You Wish For by Katherine Center. I was surprised because I've read 2 Katherine Center books before. I read How to Walk Away, which I loved, gave 5 stars easily, and then I read Things You Save in a Fire, which I didn't like as much, but I still had a really fun time with it, gave it 4 stars. This one though, unfortunately, I've never disliked a main character more than the main character in this book. I couldn't stand her. And I don't know if it had to do with the audiobook narrator. The narration style wasn't my favorite, and that may have led to me feeling even more strongly about not liking the main character. I just found it very hard to get behind some of the main characters' choices and decisions and like thought processes. I DNF'd it probably around 20%, which is a shame. But I'm still planning on reading Katherine Center's other books. I've heard great things. The next DNF I have is another unfortunate one. It is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. So this one, it is everything with the writing style, unfortunately. This one follows a group of students who attend this university that kind of shields them from the outside world a lot, and they aren't told everything. Like, there's definitely information that's being withheld from them about what's really going on in the outside world. And for me, this one just, I could not connect to the writing style. It's as simple as that. I've heard that Kazuo Ishiguro is much more of like a literary sci-fi kind of author, and when sci-fi gets too literary, it loses me very often. I'm pretty simple with my writing styles, so unfortunately I probably gave this another like 20% and just was not connecting to it at all. All right, now for the books that I did finish, and all of these books are 4 stars and above, so I really did have a good recent reading time with these books. The lowest 4-star, but still one that I really enjoyed, was Fault Lines by Emily Itami. So this is one that I think not everyone's gonna love, and I have very personal reasons behind my enjoyment of this one. This is a contemporary novel that's following this mother who lives in Tokyo, and she at one point had attended school in America and came back to Tokyo to have a family and settle down, and it's really just following her in her day-to-day, and it's very much concentrating on themes of motherhood and analyzing the differences of culture between the Japanese and the American experience that she had during school. So for me, I spent 7 years of my life in Tokyo from ages 11 to 18. So I really had like a lot of formative years growing up in the exact places that are referenced in this book. Like, there were so many times where the author would call out like a place that I had so many memories of. They referenced Roppongi Hills with the big spider statue that I would walk by every day from the bus stop back home. They referenced Omotesando, where I would go shopping at one of the big stores there. They referenced Harajuku, which I spent a lot of time at. Like, all of these places just came to life in my mind and enhanced my reading experience so much because Tokyo has such a special place in my heart. So a lot of that completely enhanced my reading experience. I like instantly felt connected to the story. The other thing that I personally loved exploring more of was the Japanese culture, because growing up there from a gaijin experience, from a foreigner's experience, you don't get all of the inner workings. You kind of see it as an outsider, and to hear it from the Japanese perspective was really fascinating, and I loved learning more about the culture from a Japanese person's experience, especially one who had spent time in America and was kind of coming back in as an outsider themselves. So it was just, for me, like such a fascinating book that I really, really enjoyed. I will say the plot itself, there isn't much of one because you're very much following the main character just living their day-to-day life. So I can see how if you're a plot-driven reader, this may not be the book for you. So I gave it 4 stars because I loved all of those cultural elements that were woven into this book. The next book I finished was Happy and You Know It by Laura Hankin. So this is another one that I don't necessarily recommend to everyone, but for me and my personal preferences and reading taste, I really enjoyed it. This one is sold as like a mystery contemporary novel, and I would say it's very light on the mystery elements. Like, I would not pick up this book thinking it is a mystery novel or a thriller novel by any means. If you go in with those expectations, you will be sorely disappointed. I think that this is just much more of a contemporary novel that's following this mommy group and this character who comes into the mommy group as a hired musician to entertain their kids, and basically you get the outsider's perspective of seeing this mommy group interact, and you also get the insider's perspective of the mommies themselves talking about their own experiences. Lots and lots of focus on motherhood and themes around that. And I also just love like juicy mommy group type stories. So for me, this one was a lot of fun. I can also see how this is not going to be the book for everyone. If you do not care about themes of motherhood, if you do not care about mommy relationship drama, this is not the book for you by any means. But I had a fun time with it. I really liked it. The ending was pretty satisfying, so I'm super glad that I read it. I gave it 4 stars. The last 4-star book I have is Rise of Empire by Michael J. Sullivan. So there's actually 2 books in this bind-up. It is Nifron Rising and it is The Emerald Storm. And both of those I gave 4 stars. And what I will say about the Raya Revelations is I really enjoy Hadrian and Royce. I think they're fantastic characters and their dynamics between each other are fantastic. I also still love the world that Michael J. Sullivan has created. I think that reading Legends of the First Empire first, I notice things that are talked about in these books that I'm like, oh my God, no, that's not right. Like, you don't know the history of your world at all. It's so wrong. Like, oh my gosh, it's so fun seeing some of those Easter eggs throughout the book. But I will say that's my favorite part of reading these books, is finding the Easter eggs. And the whole time I'm reading these books, I almost just wish I was reading Legends of the First Empire, because I think that series is superior to this one so far. Just the story itself and the cast of characters, I just feel like the overall cast isn't quite as strong. I still really enjoy some of the side perspectives, but just not nearly as much as I enjoyed the cast of characters in Legends of the First Empire. So for me, these are still a lot of fun. I'm still having a really good time with them. But when I compare it to Legends of the First Empire, Legends is still, in my opinion, way better. The next book I have is a 4.5-star book, and it is The Unsinkable Greta James by Jennifer E. Smith. This is one that I didn't know really what to expect. This follows a famous musician, Greta James, who is like this famous rock star, and something happens where she messes up this big show. It goes viral. She has to take a break for a while, and to kind of recover, she goes on this cruise with her dad. And originally, the cruise was supposed to be both of her parents going on this Alaskan cruise together, but her mom passes away very unexpectedly. So Greta James kind of takes her mom's place on this cruise and is there to kind of be an emotional support for her father. And it's a very like quiet, cozy story of Greta kind of dealing with a lot of grief, and it made me like surprisingly emotional throughout this book because I could really feel for Greta. Like, I really felt her grief. I felt the bond that her and her mother had, and it's one of those stories that makes you thankful for things in your own life. And I really appreciated like the messages in this one, and Greta as a character, I thought she had fantastic development through this book. Just explored things that I really appreciate, and I think executed very well on those themes. I will say there is a romance in this book that I didn't know needed to be there. I can see why it was there, but for me, it wasn't very convincing. So I think that that's what held this book back from being like all-time 5-star favorite. I just didn't really care about the romance. I cared much more for Greta and her family dynamics. I thought it was really well done, and it made me very emotional at the end. All right, and a 5-star book I have, this is one that I'm very torn on. It's Firefly Lane by Kristin Hannah. So this is my 4th 5-star book by Kristin Hannah. So I think it's safe to say that Kristin Hannah is an all-time favorite author for me. However, I just was so emotionally drained after this book. This one, it's a story of 2 best friends who have an experience kind of as teenagers together, and then you follow multiple decades of their lives as they kind of take separate paths, but they always have each other to fall back on. And you explore the ups and downs of their relationship, but you also explore themselves independently, kind of going on their own journeys. And it just like hit really, really hard towards the end. I don't know why I was surprised, because Kristin Hannah's books always are really sad and like make me very emotional. I thought that this one wasn't going to be quite so sad, and this one for me is the saddest of the Kristin Hannah books I've read so far. And I think it's because a lot of Kristin Hannah's books are historical fictions, and this one feels like, even though it's historical fiction, it still takes place like in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, where it feels a little bit more contemporary, and the struggles that the characters are going through feel like much more closer to home. And it just like, it hit a little too close to home at times, where it was just like really, really emotionally draining. So I thought it was beautifully done. I thought the character work, as always in any Kristin Hannah book, is always fantastic. So her characters are so real, are so multifaceted, but golly, was it sad. Oh my God. It's definitely one that will stick with you. It's definitely one that will like make you really think about things, and try not to spoil anything, but my goodness. So I would like be warned, like definitely check the content warnings before going into this one. If I had to describe this book in one word, it would just be sad. So yeah, I still like loved it, and I loved the characters, but I was just so gutted after finishing it. So anyways, that was Firefly Lane. 5 stars, but like sad. Jeez. All right, in the last book I have, I actually lent it out to my mother-in-law, so I don't have it physically, but I still nonetheless need to talk about it here. It is Educated by Tara Westover. I finally read it, right? I mean, I feel like everyone knows Educated. It's a memoir about a girl who grew up in like a survivalist Mormon family in kind of the nowhere rural area of Idaho, right? Idaho. Yeah, I think Idaho. And she growing up, you know, her parents felt very strongly that the government was like a big conspiracy, didn't send her to school. They didn't trust like doctors and modern medicine, and basically were just very much isolated in their own community. So you're following Tara as she's growing up in this family and is deciding to kind of break free and form her own path and try to get an education on her own. And it's just the most remarkable story. It just is so inspiring, and you just kind of can't believe some of the stuff that she went through. You know, at times, some of the details were so vivid, and some of these stories were so, oh my gosh, kind of unbelievable, that at times I was like, does she really remember all of this? Now, it does get explained because she had a lot of journals growing up, and she would write in her journals very often growing up. So she had these journals to help her write this memoir. So that kind of helped me kind of overcome that disbelief that she could possibly remember all of these details in such a vivid way. It was just an incredibly engaging memoir, and I just couldn't believe the strength of Tara and just her experiences. You just kind of can't believe it. Like, again, it's just the most astounding story. So I'm so glad I finally read it. 5 stars. I mean, again, memoirs for me are harder to rate. So I rate them based off of like writing style, how engaged I was. And I couldn't stop listening to the audiobook. The audiobook is fantastic. Highly recommend this one for really anyone to check out. It's just an inspiring story. Those are all of the books that I finished recently. Let's talk about the next couple books that I plan on picking up very soon. Starting with books that I've already started reading, so I definitely will have these on my next recent reads wrap up. The first being Fireborn by Rosaria Munda, because if you didn't know, Penguin Teen is hosting a Fireborn read-along to kind of lead up to the 3rd book's release. We're also reading Flamefall. I read Fireborn last year, and I remember loving it, but I had just had my baby, so I was not running on a whole lot of sleep, and I don't really remember anything. So I knew I had to reread this one before even attempting to continue on in the series. So I'm super glad that this read along came about. It gives me that push to finally pick it back up and reread it to finish out the series. So again, I'm already started it. I'm already loving it again. I think it's really well done. Definitely going to be on my next recent reads video. I also started the audiobook for The Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley Heller. This is a contemporary, very hard-hitting, like family drama story, which I tend to really enjoy those types of books. So I'm very excited to be reading this one. I've heard fantastic things about it. I'm still super early on in the audiobook, so don't have many thoughts about it yet. I also started Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater, which is a new release Orbit book that I'm super excited about. I got like halfway through it. I just think that this is absolutely adorable. This is like Regency era fantasy romance. It's so cute so far. I think that it's just the coziest little fantasy story, and I'm really enjoying it. I needed something cozy with everything going on at work. I needed something to kind of help take my mind off of it, and this was exactly the thing that I needed at just the right time. So I've been really enjoying this one. And then I also started Lachlan's by Robert Jackson Bennett, which, if you know my channel, you know I love Foundryside and Shorefall in this series. So this is the final book in the Founders trilogy. I'm so excited to finally be finishing out this trilogy. It is so good. I unfortunately picked this one up at just the wrong time, where I started it and I was really enjoying it, and then stuff hit at work that was so stressful and made it impossible to concentrate on reading, especially like epic fantasy, where you have to be focused on it in order to know what's going on. And unfortunately, like, work just became so stressful that I could not concentrate on this book. I had to put it down because I need to be in the right headspace for this. I'm really hoping that some of that anxiety from work goes away soon so that I can pick this one back up and really enjoy it, because I was really loving it when I started it, and I'm so sad that I had to put it down because of work. So hoping I have a review for you for this one in my next recent reads wrap up. Two more books that I haven't already started, but I would like to quickly mention as ones that I really do plan on picking up. Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. I was supposed to have this from my last recent reads wrap up. I had this on my TBR, was not able to get to it just because of work. I was relying much more heavily on audiobooks recently, so I have a really hard time listening to fantasy books on audio. So unfortunately, I can't get through a whole lot of fantasy books quite as quickly as like other types of genres. So I'm hoping now that work is starting kind of to calm down, kind of, not really. I'm hoping that I feel a little bit better and can like start physically reading books again and get to Assassin's Apprentice soon, because that is one of the series that I definitely want to start this year. And then I'd love to finally wrap up Rhyria Revelations series with Heir of Novron. This is a really big book because it's two separate books in this one bind-up, and both of them are the longest in this series so far, so this one will probably take a while for me to get through, so I might, not have it for my next recent reads wrap-up, just because I will probably listen to some audiobooks before I can get to this one, but I'm really hoping that once I'm able to finish all of those others, I can finish out Revelations. So those are all the books I am hoping to pick up very soon. So did you see any books that I talked about that you have any thoughts on? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you to Book of the Month once again for sponsoring this video. If you enjoyed this, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye!